Welcome to this month's webinar. Today we're going to talk about sides, left and right, and how to shift one side to the other. This is not going to be a technical one. It's going to be more process-oriented, and that's cool because I won't be needing to shift between screens and stuff like that, but I'm probably going to bumble it anyway, but that's okay. I want to warn you if you thought that cats are related to this somehow, but I really like this cat. So there are going to be surprises though, like this cat has seen before. So my name is Gil. I'm a trainer and a consultant on all kind of things that are related to making software better. And today we're going to talk about this, not from, like I said, the technical part, but from the process part. I work with developers, testers, everyone in the middle, managers, thing that who wants to create better product, better software. I'm the author of 2 books, and the reason I do this kind of thing today is, funnily enough, in the last couple of months, I was started working on doing quality reviews and working with different teams on, let's call it shift left transformations, because that's a very cool word today. 2 words really. And I think when people start talking about these kind of transformations, they seem to have like there's some kind of picture in their mind, and I want to tarnish this picture and at least shine the light on all kinds of things that you probably want in place when you start doing this, because when we have like some kind of picture in our mind, we kind of focus on this is what we need to do. We need a wider lens, and this is what I'm going to do today. Like I said, if you need this kind of help, I can help. So ping me after this, during this, before this. If you have a time machine, that's cool as well. Let's start. So if you look up shift left in Wikipedia, you'll find this thing. There's no shift left thing. We're kind of using shift left as shift left transformation or whatever, but what you will find is shift left testing. And the picture that I talked about is related to this. What people have in their mind is that we're gonna help our developers start testing. And you see, it's an approach to software testing and system testing in which testing is performed earlier in the life cycle, i.e. moved left on the project timeline. So we have times arrow and things move to the left. And there's a a lot of sense in that. If you can actually move things to the requirement, even better. If you're using approaches like test first, like BDD or ATDD and stuff like that, you are able to move testing activities to the left. And like I said, it makes sense. And let me show you in a very graphic way what it means. Like if we look at the major activities, we're talking about development and testing, and there's the delivery at the end. And it doesn't really matter if it's like short sprints or like big releases. We look at it's still waterfally in its nature. And that's cool because shift left things there's only one dimension and time, and we can move across this line. So the idea is looking at this and saying that the testing period is kind of made up of a couple of things. It looks like the Argentinian football team shirts, but it's not in this case. The blue parts are like the actual testing, and the white parts are kind of a waste. Why waste? Because we discovered things that we should have discovered at the development. The developers shouldn't have given the testers some low quality thing like they did, and therefore the testers find out, they are very angry, they go to the developers, violence erupts, call the cops, white stuff, you know. So the idea is that we want to squeeze these white bits out. And how do we do that? That's the idea behind shift left. So if we can do that, what will happen is this. So the developers will invest more time in testing their product and make sure it is up to par to what the testers actually want to get. And by this, the delivery, which is kind of chunky in this image, but it's actually a deadline, kind of one-dimensional, will actually move to the left as well. So what we're after is really about shortening timelines. That's the big idea behind that. The cool thing is if this works, actually, so what will happen is this, because we don't think about it, and then definitely not in the beginning as we're doing the changes. This is like a learning period, and a lot of other stuff. The idea is that the development time shouldn't change too much. This is because we're kind of thinking, well, they need to work more on tests, and like, yes, but no, typing is not like the bottleneck. So developers will learn how to write tests. They will write tests. This will become part of the work, and there's going to be shrinkage again. And they're going to continue after a while to work in a certain pace, which was like before, because testing is not really something that slows things down. And if it does, that's not a bad thing. But maybe developers are working too fast. But we're looking for something that will, as we go long term, developers will keep the pace going. Testing will be either shorter, or we can use the time that we have freed for us by the developers, use it to do more deep diving into things that we didn't have time before, or do some more exploration. So we can do something with our time, but the end result will be a more quality process. And as you can see in PowerPoint, actually looks great. So but like I said, this is like a big thing. If we have like that, we're going to start asking developers to write tests. We're going to be surprised why it didn't work, because we need to take into account just a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today. So I won't say there's a right way to do it, my way, but there are, if you think about all this thing, and like every other transformation or organizational change, we need to minimize the risks. It's going to be something that we didn't do before, so it's going to be a learning experience. And the more we think about what's going to happen, be aware of things that are about to happen, it's going to be easier for us with less surprises, and maybe we'll prepare better, which is a good thing to do. And the best way to start thinking about it is look at it strategically. What do we want to achieve? So we already talked about the first one, where we reduce time to delivery. So obviously this is something that we want. The next one is again a strategic thing, and this is about squeezing all the white stuff out of the blue. The idea about test and test automation is that they give us feedback whether our code works, our feature works, our system works, whatever we want to achieve, or if something is not working, the problem is there. So we want to reduce the time to feedback, because if you currently have full automation, but you have to wait 3 days to know if you made a change, if something really broke, people will wait. People fill up the time until there is a feedback, and they will move slower, and they will wait for if let's take something more reasonable. If you're committing code and it takes an hour for your feedback, if something works for the entire team, chances are in this hour you probably won't start working on something new. And these things like add up. So we want to invest in reducing the time to feedback from the tests. The thing that we don't talk about, but we actually need to be aware of, because we actually want to do something that's new, but also something that's not going to take buildings down. So we want to retain and improve the quality level. So return first, not break anything that's not that's what it is working now. If we are in this kind of level of quality, we want at least to stay here for a while before we move up. Actually, having a goal to improve quality is always good, so we want that. That's the strategy. But in order to do that, let's take a level down and talk about tactically what we want. And that is probably a couple of things. The two most important are here. First of all, it's a mindset thing. We want the developers not to take ownership on quality, because that quality of ownership is a team thing. We used to think about testers or QA, quality assurance, as gatekeepers. They won't get anything that is less than the quality that we want out the gate. Sure, but how do we get to that gate? Well, that's a team effort. So if the developers either test or don't test their code without any relationship to what the testers are accepting, then testers will be surprised. And we want, as part of this thing, to have the developers at least take ownership about their quality of the code. But again, this is like a shared ownership, because this is a team thing, developers and testers together. The second thing is that we want to make it easier for developers to test early. And like, if we're talking about like shift left is about developers writing unit tests, we want to help them write unit tests and not just teach them how to do that. We want, because if they're working on legacy code like from 8 years ago, which was not written with testability in mind, it's not really testable. The minute they bump into this code, the code will win. So we need to support all kinds of processes, and some refactoring as well, to make it possible for them to test early. Otherwise, we won't be able to do that shift we're talking about. So the first one is about mindset. Like, ownership is something that we don't really feel. We can't teach ownership, but we can see it's there, and we will be able to see that it's going based on the quality that's going to be raised by what they are producing. Second one is a lot more technical. You can actually look and see where things are hard to do, where things are easier to do, and when they catch up. There's nothing that there's something else that appears here that, sorry, there is something that doesn't appear here. And this is more about management, and this is how easy it is to see the progress. And I'll talk about that as well when we get to talk about reporting. Now, it's going to be a bumpy road. Every change, every big change is a bumpy road, because like I said, it's new. A lot of people don't like change. Well, the change that they will have to go through, somebody puts them through. And usually, and I haven't met another case to convince me otherwise, we don't stop work in order to do that. This big change is going to be, I won't say in parallel, it's going to be part of the work. So we are going to continue working on this, and this is going to take a while. It's not going to be like 2 or 3 days or a couple of weeks. It's going to take months. And in these months, we are not going to stop work. We're going to deliver features. We're expected to do that. We want to do that. So things will happen, and it will happen as we're moving along. And this needs to be coinciding with the goals that we already have in terms of business. A couple more things that it's going to happen. So first of all, it needs to be incremental. It's not like we're going to go to a course in 2 days. We know everything. We're going to start implementing everything now. It's not going to do that. It's going to be incremental, because the learning curve is going to be like longer. We won't be able to adapt to everything that we see. We know all the patterns, we know all the tools. That's great, but we won't be able to try it and to see what works and what doesn't. And this means that it's going to be experimental as well. We're going to try things because different teams have different people with different types of skills, with different types of code, different types of motivation. So we are going to try things, and some of these things will work, some of the things will not work, and we will need to adapt as we go. We need to be aware as we're moving through this change in our mind that this is how it's going to work. The final thing is we need some ways to look at our progress and see if it's going, and not at the end. It's not like we're going to wait a year or half a year, look at what we've done and said, it didn't work. No, we need to have this thing uh, measured in a way that tells us if we're going the right way or the wrong way. And we'll talk about that as well, because this is part of the things that we need to have in place while we start working on that. So there are basically, the way I see it, like 4 pillars of processes that help us on the way there. And this is like the things that we need to be aware. And we need to have these things in place along the path. A lot of them in the beginning, but not everything in the beginning. It depends on where you are, where we're going to start. The first one is guidance. And guidance is having answers, or having people with answers, or having availability to people with answers. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Training is that this is that the first thing that we talk about. People have their skills here, they want to get here. The jump is usually done by training. The reporting part is, I think it's closing the loop. It's like, I think it's almost as good as important as doing the job itself. And we'll talk about that as well. And finally, it's the knowledge sharing. When you're a very small organization, it's done on the job. When you're a mid-level to big organization, you probably don't want to start with everything from scratch. So you're going to spread the knowledge in some way to other teams, and we need to think about that as well. Probably not at the beginning, but we are going to need to talk about this as well. Okay, so when we're talking about guidance or guides, usually there are all kinds of information and all kinds of knowledge within the team that, or outside the team, that usually are kind of based under different roles. This is what me and Spidey here are kind of painting the picture. I threw a couple of them on the wall and give you examples of what they do and what the responsibilities are, but also what kind of answers they can give us. I'm going to start with the architects, because architects, we don't think about like shift left. Yeah, this is a job for the developers, but architects, whether you have them or you have like senior developers or something like that, there is some kind of knowledge that is important there and answers that they can do. And first of all, because the things are going to be as part of the job, we need some kind of answers of what kind of code are we going to change, and where are we allowed to do that? What are the boundaries that we are going to work within? What are not? Because the architects, in my assumption of role, know what is the end design. We're going to break down a monolith into smaller pieces. How are we going to do this? Yes, it's going to help the stability. Yes, it's going to help test early. But which way are we going? What kind of testable patterns are we going to use? And maybe the developers know that, maybe they don't. Maybe the architect should know about this, because a part of the testing that we're going to do involves knowing this kind of boundary and working these kind of patterns, adapters, and working with queues and stuff like that. Where are we going to mock and how we're going to mock? So that's usually knowledge and answers that we're going to expect from the architects. Another thing is that if you have like not a single product, but a product line, and you're working on some kind of a common infrastructure for these products, and you're working now on product X out of 5, the architects will know what kind of impact that will have on other things. And we want this kind of knowledge and let's call it insight rather than answers, because we want people to be aware of this. We're going to touch this code. We're going to make it more testable. It's going to be tested. What does it mean for other products in there? Okay, so these are examples of what architects can do. Let's talk about testers. Obviously, the testers are like the people who are going to guide us about, first of all, we're talking about shift left. They're the customers of the developers code. So yeah, they're going to set up the quality standard that they need to expect, and then they need to communicate that as well. So that's one thing. The other thing, talked about the product line. If we touch this thing, what does it mean? We need to like now retest everything. And these kind of answers, like these are very important answers, because we might look at that and say, well, probably not a good place to start, or maybe that's a great place to start. We won't touch anything else. Other testers can tell you also if there are existing tests somewhere. And this is very important, because when you're going to write tests, developer tests, you want to be aware of other tests, because either you'll get more safety net, because you'll the like system tests are there, they're going to catch things that you didn't, and that's cool. Or you maybe want to build some kind of redundancy, because if you have redundancy of tests, like different tests checking different parts of the same workflow, then you have redundancy, and that you'll get more answered, more information, and maybe you want that as part of your quality improvement. Testers can also tell you, well, this is our test plan for the feature or for this product. These are the things that are important for us. These are the things that we're going to focus on. Therefore, these things better work when they get to our hands. So the guidance comes in this way. And finally, they can also help with defining, because of that, the quality metrics. What are the measurements that we do need to look at? Because these are kind of correlated with the business deals, kind of derive them from the same thing. I put the product people them because usually they don't touch the code, but they do as part of the team. Well, not as part of it. They are part of the team, so they share the responsibility for quality as well, but they also have some kind of guidance in terms of prioritization. When you read a spec, you don't see what is more important. You can either assume what's important, or if you had discussions, or somebody shouted at you because you thought differently. But a lot of these things are not written in the specs. So these are the people who can give us answers. What kind of scenario or sub-scenario is more important than others? The developers, well, actually, they're going to do most of the work, right? And that means that they are going to build their own knowledge, or you're going to retrieve it from other teams that have done this in terms of tools. And I'm not just like testing tools, not like JUnit and that's it. We're talking about testing tools and compilers and build tools and linkers, everything that's in the pipeline that helps build the software that helps write tests and run them. Includes CI as well. So obviously you'll need to have this kind of answer. How do I do this? What kind of patterns do I use? How do I change the code? How do I refactor safely? All these things are in the developer's bag of tricks. There's also the thing of test design. This is another skill that you want to up. We'll talk about training in a second, but if test prioritization, what we're going to test comes from the testers, how we're going to test it doesn't always come from there, although it can. Is a unit test enough? Do we need to do API tests? Just an API test? What kind of, is it an API to the end, API with internal or in-memory database? This thing is a test design. how do we test this thing in order to sleep better at night? And again, this has to come with communication and collaboration with the testers as well. So patterns and techniques and all different technologies have different way of solving stuff. We want the answers to come on the developer side. And one thing that developers, apart from all the things that we're going to talk about, like writing the tests themselves, don't do, and you probably want them to do, is some kind of documentation. I'm not talking about documentation of the code, because hopefully the code is readable and self-documenting. Now we're talking about things that are will help us with when we transition to work with other teams. So the team is working now. And that means documentation of patterns and how-tos and solutions to problems that they bumped into. We'll see how this fits into the knowledge sharing later. Other people who play here in this game is DevOps. Again, you might not have DevOps people if in smaller organizations. You're probably going to have them in larger organizations, and they need to support developers in making it easy for them to create branches, merge stuff, and all kinds of things that are a part of the reporting. We talked about metrics that we're going to collect, like number of tests or coverage and stuff like that. Somebody needs to work with the tools to collect these metrics. And remember, we talked about making it easy to get to the hands of the clients, the developers, managers, so on. These are the people. If you're collecting things and creating reports inside Jira, that's okay. We'll need that, because if you have the information that you want in different places and you expect people to go for three different places every time to collect this data, they won't do it. Unless you create the platform for them to see all the information that you've decided in one place, it's going to be a lot of work, and a lot of work means it's not going to be done. Remember I talked about developers, easier to write tests. That also means that the data, the information that we're actually looking for, the metrics, are also readily available. Finally, management, like usually the ones that drive the change, they have a very big role and need to have the answers of why are we doing that? What kind of things do you need in order to do that? How is it going in other teams? Usually the responsibility of reviewing metrics, defining the metrics maybe, and tracking them and deciding what to do, or help the team decide what to do when they see the results. This is part of the responsibility of management, and they need to come up with not the answers of how to do stuff, but maybe the organizational answers. Like if they need to set up something in DevOps, usually this kind of thing, like how do we do that? How do we manage that? Falls in their lap. And that's just the beginning, of course. You can think about all kinds of things that fall into different roles, but you can see that the scope of what we need to look for, because we're just doing like a small change, like developers actually starting to write a test, that's a big thing. Training, like I said, is very important. I do some training, of course, if you need some help. But training can come from external things like myself, or internal for somebody who had experience in this organization, in another experience, in another organizations. You need to look for what you want to train though. It could be something, I'd say, simple, like tools and mocking and stuff like that, which is like very closed, very known boundaries. But you have other things that you want to train people in order to do that, to do things better, and not like the first thing they do it is on your code. And that means like test planning and test design and prioritizations and refactoring, all these kind of things. Some people know at some level, some people don't know at all. This would be the first time. And they need to learn how to do it like There are millions of resources and ways to do that, but this is part of the game as well. You need to create a way for people to move up. Testable design patterns, right? The reporting part is basically the measurements, defining the measurements. And you probably want to have some kinds in mind before you actually start working. And once you know what you actually want to collect, start building the infrastructure for collecting it and putting them in a report so people will actually have it when they start working. So there are going to be quality goals like coverage. Usually you probably want incremental coverage rather than like coverage over everything that you've been running for the last 10 years, because then you won't see the bits. That's not a great motivator. So we're talking about coverage in an area that's pre-selected that we're actually going to work on. One of the things that you actually look for, and when you're starting, when you want to see how people are reacting to this process and how many tests they're actually right, number of tests. You can actually see over time, like number of untestable tests can give you an idea of people get these ideas of good tests and put them in there. You can look at the overall quality, like number of caused bugs, like I touched this, but this one was caught here. And maybe if you're actually looking for something to replace the automation, the big automation thing, you can collect the number of replaced tests. So you can look at these kind of things, whatever you, again, the idea of quality and teamwork. I'm not going to break somebody else's build by committing my code now untested. So this is probably something that you might actually want to look at. You probably don't want to look at everything. You want to select something that we're going to try for the next couple of things. You probably want to check something that I'm not sure it's going to be comparable, but maybe in your case it is, like time to done. When are things going to be done? Every task going to be different, depends on how many people are going to work on it and so on. And they are not different. They are much different than the thing that we worked on it before, but maybe you can do some kind of categorical comparison or something like that to see that the times, what happens to times over time when people are actually getting it, how things are looking. In order to spread the knowledge, you will need like people talking about what they're doing, and we have ways to call these people like champions and ambassadors, and that's a good thing. Like people should know who to go to if they have answers, but usually that's not enough in a medium or larger size company. Because people don't meet. And in order for them to meet, you need to create some kind of a meeting place. And that would be something like a guild or a testing club or whatever. And this kind of thing you schedule like every 2 weeks or every month, like people know there is something like that. And you send people there and you send a message that this is important. Stop working right now on this very important but can take 1 hour of your time and go there and talk about testing, because this is very important for us. And you can talk about things like patterns and things that the other developers have documented, and like I said, all kinds of experience. And if you do it like close enough to where the people actually worked on that, you can also talk about not the war, sort of a war stories, but the decisions. Because when we look at code examples or the final thing that was implemented or the final test, this is the result of all kinds of things, of a process of thinking, of discussing, of arguing, but this is what we decided. And if it's close enough to where you actually took the decision, so you remember that, you can actually tell these kind of stories. People actually want to hear that. And this is a lot of the times more important, the process of how we thought about these things, rather than the final result. The final result may be like very specific, but the thinking about is how we try to do this and how we try to build an adapter here so we can actually don't require the entire system to load in 10 minutes before running the first test. And this is how we solved this. I mean, these are the things that we thought about, and this is why we decided to do this rather than that. These kind of war stories are very important in order to make it easier for the other teams to learn and not just say, well, this is their code, their project, they know better, they know what to do. Final thing, about this and the guides as well, capacity is important. Like if you schedule this kind of thing and you let people and you push people to go there, that's great. The guides, champions, the ambassadors who needs to be there for the other teams, they need to be available for the other teams as well. So those are the pillars that you have to think about. Well, some of it really. How do you start? First of all, you need to select like who's going to do it first. You need teams and you need features. You need to look at the work plan that you're going to go through and say, well, we're going to attack these kind of features and we're going to do some kind of shift lefting with that, meaning we're going to add some kind of developers tests around this thing. The project or the features that you're actually going to select need to be not easy because you actually want to learn and how these kind of things are going to impact not just this project or product, but also other teams as well. It's like I said, it's a learning experience, but you also don't want to make it super high risk, like hard deadlines and stuff like that, because what will happen is that at some point there's going to be a decision to be made, and here the deadlines will win. So people are going to say, well, we can continue start fiddling with that and do the learning and stuff like that, but we're going to need to push this delivery by a month because we're learning stuff now. And if this like if it's not going to be, let's say, flexible, then the first thing that will be dropped is this thing, this new stuff. And it's true for every new stuff, like clean code or testing or automation, whatever. So you want to have it mid to low risk, something that you can actually be flexible about and like take it for a long time, that you can experiment with that. Teams need to be motivated. They need to, they're going to learn about new stuff. This should be like a motivator rather than a detractor. So if we have like a team that wants to learn, great, this would be the learn to do that. You probably want to have some kind of high-level test plan. You want to know what you're actually going to look at of how this feature is going to work, because like we said, it's part of the guidance. We need some kind of answers of what is important to work in this thing. What you also want in the teams is that they need to know the code. Then usually that's not a problem, but sometimes it's like teams that take over some new code for them, and they probably are not the best point to know what to do and how things are supposed to work and why you don't touch this line of code ever. So have them know the code itself. You want to do some kind of review of the skills that are existence in the team. Remember, I'm talking about team, not specific developers. It's a team thing. And that team that we're talking about, like tools and patterns and skills like planning and design and test writing and refactoring and naming and test organization, all kinds of things. And you want to define what's important to you in terms of quality goals. We talk about examples of that, like coverage or feature stability, depending on what you're after in this thing. You probably want CI support for that before you begin. If you need different branches ready for that, make sure they are ready before you start working. Collection of metrics. If you want to collect the metrics, make sure that the metric collection actually works before you start, because otherwise you're going to start, people will have the questions, you won't have the answers. And you need to plan, actually plan, not like leave it for when they need it. some capacity of all the different guides we talked about. Some of them are in the team, so they're probably going to be more available. If you bring some kind of guides from other teams or externally, you need to plan for that, because you actually need, people will have the questions as they were going to bump into the work itself. When you're starting to work in some kind of sprints, because I'm not sure you're working with sprints or iterations or like 3 months release, it doesn't matter. Depending on what you're doing, don't change the goals, the metrics, like for at least 2, 3, 4 sprints, because this is a learning thing. So this is what we're going to look at. This is you communicating that to the team before you begin. This is what we're going to look at. This is how we're going. This is where we're going to get this information from, and this is why we're doing that, and this is the meaning of that. And you start doing these kind of activities inside a sprint. So part of the planning for a sprint or iteration or whatever includes creating the test plan. What is important? And the test plan then is analyzed by the developers, and there's going to be like collaboration between the developers and testers. And there's going to be an agreement about these features going to be delivered with this set of unit tests and these API tests and these integration tests or end-to-end tests. Doesn't matter, but once you have a collaboration between this, it is agreed that this is the done thing. This is the definition of done that we're looking for. So this needs to be part of the planning or pre-planning or whatever you're doing. But people will start working with the idea of this is what we want to achieve as done. While they're working, you probably want some kind of mentoring. Again, hi, I am mentoring. But again, it doesn't have to be me. Could be an internal thing. You want to have people on hand. Sometimes it's not possible, like you're doing everything by yourself and you're taking it as a learning experience. People will learn on the job. But if you can, other people can help to help with mentoring on specific things, again, that you discussed, that you're going to be focused on. We're going to make this thing testable and write one unit test at the end of the sprint. Yeah, how do we make it testable? How do we make it testable safely? We need people with experience to teach us how to do this, and you want to plan for that. Finally, the end of the sprint, we do retrospectives, and this is where we actually look at metrics and we discuss their achievements or non-achievements. It doesn't matter how we did. We said it is going to be delivered like this. It was delivered like that. Excellent, where this equals that. If it's not, why is that? Let's see what we can do in order to make that happen next time. And you can take this, because this is an important thing of what we're doing. Do some kind of review within the entire team of the tests that were written, the problems that you've bumped into, and how you solved them or worked around them. Again, this is important for the team to learn, because this is not a single developer effort. And this is a good point to actually look at things that you've done and what you want to take for the next time, suggestions, recommendations, and move on. Yeah, and that's all. So I hope that what you've got for me today is that, like, this is a big thing. It's not like developers starting to write their own tests. A lot of players, a lot of moving parts, and you need to like prepare not just for starting the work, but think about all the organizational stuff that you need in place. Some of it are people, usually. Some of it are kinds of information automation, bring the reports. A lot of it is managerial decisions and design decisions. What we're going to do first, why are we going to do that, and communication of what are we going to do, and why is that important, and why is that important for the future. And a lot of collaboration between different people of the team, so we can actually squeeze those white lines out of the blue and get the developers to make it easier for them to test, because they're learning new stuff and patterns and tools and how to do that, which will become the part of the bag of tricks or tool set or whatever you want to call it, later on become part of the work so they can actually deliver something with higher quality, more quickly, and reduce the timelines. This is what we actually want. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. Not technical, probably going to get to technical stuff with other webinars. So if you have some kind of need of what I talked about, please let me know. I can help. Not this woman, but maybe others. So you can get in touch with me with all kinds of things, social networks as well. And if you want to see recording of this webinar and other webinars and other videos that I put on weekly, go to my YouTube channel called Testing Gil. Thanks for coming today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was beneficial, and I'll see you in other webinars. Bye now.